Elders past, present and future of the Arakwal people, on whose country Kavimbar we currently gather. And that's actually very appropriate because Kavimbar means meeting place. And as I understand it, this area never formally belonged to any particular mob, but it was a place where people gathered for feasting and enjoying themselves and having a good time. So in that sense, I guess you could say Byron Kavimbar has been a party town for thousands of years. Beat that, Paris, Rome, New York. So we're not really doing anything here new tonight. But speaking of parties, Susie, my better half, my light of my life, San Mardi, the wise one. She was given that name by her guru Muktananda.
Many years ago.
And you know,
Back in the 70s.
sometimes, you know, gurus just get it so right, don't they? Because Susie, as you all know pretty well, is never wrong. Never wrong. Must be hard. There's no bullshit. With Susie, what you see is what you get. And in her generous, warm-hearted way, she wanted this 70th thing to be a big event. We were going to hire a hall and a band and get caterers in, and Susie was going to undertake some exotic, mysterious performance, and I was going to do a 2.5-hour PowerPoint autobiography. The usual shots, me in the pram, and then
Smiling competition.
me winning the smiling competition at the Vogue Picture Theatre in 1956. Something that gave me such a deluded sense of overconfidence that I shortly afterwards jumped off the air raid shelter at the back of my parents' hotel, only to break an ankle and so traumatised my parents that they sent me to boarding school for my own protection for the next 10 years. So then there'd be shots of me arriving at Nudgee Junior and tearing off down the driveway after Dad's pink and green Chrysler Royal, tears streaming down my eyes, begging them not to leave me there to the tender mercies of the Christian Brothers, which they did. And so that explains quite a lot, but I won't go into that. And I said, no, Susie, no, we can't hire a hall and do all that stuff. I said, because for a start, I've only got 2 or 3 friends and half of them won't come. And so she says, well, I've got hundreds of friends. I'll just tell them all to come along and pretend to like you.
And I said, you don't even have to be there. Just turn up at 11 o'clock. Everybody wants a party.
Oh, now I know why you're a script writer.
I said, yeah, pretending. All your friends would be pretty good at that. See, there they all are. Pretending to be outraged. No, we talk like that all the time. We're not serious, you know. We're just like giving each other these little tongue lashings. Oh, it's very handy for a playwright to have that kind of dialogue going on at home. In fact, it's a bit like being in a never-ending production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. More rubbing alcohol, Martha? So I said, no, look. Besides, and this was the clincher, I said, look, I haven't got a big enough ego to fill the Margaret Hall or the Suffolk Park Community Centre. I mean, my brain is enormous, but my ego is minuscule. Oh no, come on. Oh, come on. Born on the same day as Albert Einstein, 14th of March. There's something about the alignment of the earth on the 14th of March, all this intelligence and wisdom just comes streaming in. I said sharing a name with one of the great physicists, cosmologists of the 21st century.
Yeah, get on with it.
Professor Paul Davies writes books like The Mind of God and How to Build a Time Machine and explores the deepest, darkest mysteries of the universe. Dr. Paul Davies writes plays like Living Rooms and Storming Mount Albert by Tram, which explore the inner depths of St Kilda boarding houses and Melbourne public transport. Not a lot of difference there. Money, the 70s were the best of times and the worst of times. Because at the beginning there was all this wonderful positive energy from the 60s, you know, the love, peace and happiness, the hippie ideal, the various moratorium marches, the pushback against the carnage in Vietnam, the beginnings of second wave feminism, the push for Indigenous land rights, activism around protecting forests that made us realise what we were doing to the environment. All of which, you know, were expressed here in Australia, at least, with the election of the Whitlam Labor government in 1972, and all the amazing social changes that they pushed through. And on a personal level, at the beginning of the 70s, in a cultural sense, I somehow flipped a position at Crawford's, which amazingly landed me in the middle of this film and television revolution that was happening in Australia. I mean, at the time I arrived there, Crawford's were making 5 or 6 teledramas that were rating over everything that we were importing from America and Britain at the time. And in the film industry, we had the golden period of Peter Weir and Picnic at Hanging Rock and all that. So it was a fantastic time to land in Melbourne and to be part of all that. But it was too good to last, and on the political level, then there was the sacking of the Whitlam government, and in which a dipsomaniac or paranoid royal envoy sacked a democratically elected government. And Hector Crawford, like Gough, was also in a way cut down by the networks because he wanted to establish an Australian network, and that all came to an end when they cancelled all of his shows at once. So,
and gave the TV licence to the biggest donor to the Liberal Party.
Reg Jansen. Yeah. So Reg got the Channel 10 licence and we didn't have an Australian network. Not that I'm pushing not that I want to push a nationalist line per se, which is always a fraught concept, but in the 70s there was a moment when culturally and politically I think we had a chance to express ourselves as a nation separate from the other players, you know, the big stuff. So adversity has the advantage of sometimes making you resilient, and we're still there, we're still fighting and we're still carrying on, and you know, it all goes from one thing to another. But it strikes me that people, you know, and we discuss this sometimes in our philosophical meetings and stuff, but you know, people are capable of extraordinary things. When you think about, we went from the Wright brothers to landing on the moon in 69 years, which is a 70-year thing, you know. That's, I mean, take a bow, humanity, that's pretty amazing. And so I look back on the 70s as a fascinating formative time, and for me and for all of us who were there. And fortunately, not all the good stuff could be wound back by the forces of darkness, so we're kind of still in there. And, you know, here we are, God, living in this sort of amazing demi-paradise, and sometimes, you know, cycling to yoga or going for a quick dip on an unpolluted beach and breathing clean air. And I think, you know, I can go to a farmer's market and buy stuff off the people who grow it, and it's organic, and it's just, I mean, I'm so, I feel so fortunate, you know, and also to have friends like you, here. It's just amazing. So I just want to say, to hell with the Bible and Shakespeare. I think, you know, look, 70 may be it, but let's go for another 10 years.